Welcome. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a brand new style of grease cartridge called Lube Shuttle. And a Texas refinery is offering Paragon 3000 in a Lube Shuttle cartridge. So let's learn about this cartridge. In a standard cartridge where you'd have that open end on both sides and your grease gun would have a spring and a plunger, the Lube Shuttle tube is threaded on one side and has a plastic follower plate at the rear of the tube. So when we're going to use this cartridge, here's what we need to do. We've got a brand new grease gun right here. So we're going to go through the entire process with you so you know and your customer can learn from you and go from there. So all we have to do to start greasing and prime this grease gun is going to be push up on that follower plate at the rear of the tube till we've got about 1/4 inch of grease sticking out of the top of that tube. Maybe a little bit more the first time. Then we take that grease gun and we just thread in that grease tube. Now, because this is a brand new grease gun, it's going to take a couple of pumps to get that grease coming out. You can actually feel it going through, and it's just filling up that hose right now. So we can see it's coming out. That's all you need to do. There's no air gap. There's no leaking grease. There's no wasted grease. That's all you have to do to get that grease gun working. The only issues you're ever going to have is if when you thread in that tube, if you do not push on that bottom follower plate inside that tube and get that 1/4 inch of grease sticking up. That's the only thing that's going to give you a little bit of trouble. Because this system works on a vacuum, if we don't get that grease pressed up tight into that machined head, there's going to be a little airlock in there. So we got to make sure to press on that bottom of that tube, get that 1/4 inch of grease sticking up out of that tube, and then thread it in to the grease gun and start greasing, and you're good to go. So the grease gun comes like any standard grease gun. It doesn't look much different than a standard grease gun, other than you don't have that spring or plunger at the bottom of the unit. But there's obviously a lever handle unit that looks the same, operates the same procedure for loading that. And then of course there is an electric 18 volt model as well. The neat thing with Lube Shuttle is it's very dynamic. So we do see it on some centralized lubrication systems, especially hydraulic hammers. And hydraulic hammers might use a different style of lube cartridge. So there's different cartridges out there, including a Fuchs cartridge and a Lincoln cartridge. And we see those mainly in hydraulic hammers in a construction setting. So you can use an adapter like this. This one's actually for a Lincoln cartridge. So on your hydraulic hammer, you may have a situation where it's using a Lincoln cartridge. They want to switch to Paragon and a Lube Shuttle cartridge. This simply screws in, and then that adapter threads in to that centralized lubrication system. And it's the same for this other adapter that we have here, which is for a Fuchs cartridge. A little different thread. And you'll be able to tell if it's a Lincoln cartridge, a Lube Shuttle cartridge, or a Fuchs cartridge. So just to stress one time again, when you load this tube, all you have to do, push on that rear follower plate, get that 1/4 inch of grease up, thread that tube in, and you're good to go. Okay, so what happens when this tube is half full? The guy took it out, was going to switch grease or wanted to see how much grease he had. Now he's got a half full tube of grease, and that follower plate is halfway up this tube. So to use that tube, you still need to get that grease pushed up to get it threaded back into the grease gun. So you just use the hose on the grease gun, you push it up the bottom of that tube onto that follower plate, get that 1/4 inch of grease sticking up, and then thread it back into your grease gun, and you're back greasing. So the neat thing again with Lube Shuttle is that it is very dynamic. And one of the places it's really found a niche is in our ecoJET spray greaser. So when you're doing maintenance on crane booms, slideways, jibways, different things like that, where you're applying grease physically, and a lot of people, a lot of places are going to do this with a paintbrush or a roller or like a metal spade almost to get that grease applied. You can actually spray grease using this ecoJET spray greaser with a Lube Shuttle cartridge. So I will show you how that's going to work. We have a Lube Shuttle cartridge in here with that Paragon grease. And you thread that in there. You want to make sure this outer tube is tight because we do put compressed air back into this cylinder to get that grease pushed out and up into the spray head. On the back here is a small plastic valve, and that's going to allow us to adjust how much airflow we have going through the gun. The other adjustment here is for the amount of grease and the spray pattern. So let's keep it simple. Let's keep rolling. We'll just plug this into the air, and we'll start with some low pressure, and I'm just going to spray it onto this sheet here so you can see how it's going to work. So we're up and charged, and now we're just going to spray. We'll adjust the pressure slightly so we have a little bit of air going through the gun. So you can see it sprays on there very easily. It's just like painting. It's almost very directly similar to a spray gun for painting. So air adjustment, grease adjustment. There's different nozzles that can come with it. Sometimes you have a lancet to really push grease back into a deep spot. The typical nozzle right here is going to be the best for doing crane booms and different things like that. And you are able to adjust the direction of that as well. Turn it this way or that way so you have a fan pattern vertically or horizontally depending on how you want to apply that grease. So you can do it very localized like we did up here, or I mean you can spray it in like a stream almost as well. But that's a very unique application, and once again that works great for greasing open ways, you know, like on an extending sliding crane boom, something like that. Or slideways and different things in that area. So that's a very unique option, only available with a Lube Shuttle cartridge to make that work. So that's very unique and a very specialized niche area for both that Paragon grease and a Lube Shuttle cartridge and an ecoJET spray greaser.